Adelise Wrenlock watched the Dragon King set fire to her rope house before anyone tested the 3 cables that had snapped. Flame climbed the tarred eaves of the Sky Winch yard, turning 20 years of fire-hemp records into black curls. Behind the workshop, injured dragons waited in iron cradles while replacement lines groaned through the royal winch. Dragon King Lysander Corve stood at the edge of the yard with Adelise's brass guild mark in his hand. 3 failures in 1 month, he said. 8 riders injured, 2 cargo platforms lost. Your mark is revoked, your house condemned, and every flight line under your name withdrawn from service. Adelise looked toward the cables still running through the yard. They are not under my line. Quartermaster Hadria Dern held the replacement inventory against her black coat. The Crown purchased them through Wrenlock's specification. The knots carry her guild pattern. The knots do, Adelise said. The rope does not. Hadria's expression remained grave rather than pleased. Fire-hemp changes after altitude curing. Grief may have made you remember the fiber more faithfully than you supplied it. The cruelty lay in its restraint. 3 years earlier, Adelise's husband Hugh had died hanging beneath a broken lift line while a cargo platform swung above the eastern nesting cliffs. The court recorded poor knotwork. The quartermaster's report said the rope had failed where his hand tied it. Adelise had spent 3 years preserving the cut ends he never lived to defend. Lysander closed his fingers around her guild mark. You will leave the yard before sunset. Shut the lifts first. The northern towers are carrying wounded dragons. Then lower them by hand teams and grounded sledges. Do not put another load on those replacement cables. Hadria turned 1 page of the inventory. The replacement stock passed Crown inspection. Which inspection? Quartermaster tensile review. Not rope-right heat memory. Lysander's gaze sharpened. Once, during the siege of Ashen Spires, Adelise had fastened his descent line while dragonfire broke across the tower face. He had trusted her not with his weight and the wounded dragon beneath him. Now he held her mark as if skill could be revoked by decree. Explain, he said. Adelise pointed to a broken cable end recovered from the western lift. Embercord remembers the direction and weight of its last true load. When a failed knot is heated, it contracts toward the point where its tension was altered. Hadria answered at once. It remembers strain, not fraud. Wind shear, poor splicing, or an uneven winch drum can change tension. Yes. The agreement unsettled the court more than accusation. The knot cannot name who changed the line, Adelise continued. It cannot tell whether the change was lawful, careless, or deliberate. It can show only where the true load ceased to travel, as the rope-right set it. Lysander looked at the burning house. Your records are already compromised. You burned them before testing the surviving cord. A beam collapsed inside the workshop. Heat rolled across the yard. From the evidence rack beside the fire, 1 severed knot tightened with a sound like teeth closing. Then another answered. 12 broken Embercord knots, each cut from a failed or condemned line, began to glow from within. The fibers burned copper red without catching flame. Their loops twisted backward, away from the rope house and across the yard, toward the royal winch. Hadria stepped between the knots and the drum. The machine carried every line. Of course, the strain remembers it. Not every point on the machine, Adelise said. She moved no closer than the painted evidence boundary. Mark each direction before anything is touched. Lysander signaled the yard clerks. Ash stakes were driven beside every glowing end. 11 lines converged on the eastern side of the royal drum. The 12th pulled lower, toward the locked feed housing where replacement cable entered from quartermaster stores. It was not a map of guilt. It was a map of altered load. The result did not prove Hadria had substituted fiber. It did not prove Adelise's workshop had supplied sound rope. It established that the altered tension lay after the lines entered Crown Winch custody. One of the suspended dragons cried out. The replacement cable above its cradle shed a pale strand. Adelise saw the fiber before anyone else did. Stop the drum, Hadria said. A sudden stop will trap the dragon between towers. A continued lift will drop her. Lysander looked to the winch master. "Keep the load moving," Hadria ordered. Slowly, Adelise crossed the yard and struck the emergency brake with both hands. The drum screamed. The dragon's cradle swung over the ravine, but the cable held long enough for the ground teams to catch the lower guide ropes. Riders hauled until the injured beast settled against the stone platform. Lysander seized Adelise's arm as the brake lever kicked back. She pulled free. Do not mistake rescue for consent. The same hands had once attached his safety line beneath falling fire. Now she denied him even gratitude. The stopped cable sagged across the drum. Its outer braid carried the dark gloss of fire-hemp. Beneath the broken surface lay soft gray fibers that drank the heat instead of resisting it. Marsh-reed, Hadria said. A field splice may contain secondary fiber. One exposed strand does not establish the composition of the whole cable. No, Adelise replied. So cut nothing until a neutral fiber count. Lysander ordered the drum, feed housing, failed knots, suspended cable, and burn order sealed under separate witnesses. He did not return Adelise's guild mark. He did not withdraw the order destroying what remained of her house. He had sealed the evidence only after burning the place where the first comparison should have lived. The royal winch remained in crown hands. Behind the feed housing, the 12 Embercord knots tightened again. This time the metal panel bent inward. A narrow cord emerged from beneath it, wrapped around the replacement spool like a hidden correction. Its braid carried no Wrenlock mark. It carried the quartermaster's black inventory thread. The thread did not prove Hadria knew the spool contained marsh fiber. It proved the replacement line had been altered inside the custody her office controlled. Adelise faced the king who had burned the place where that comparison should have begun. "You destroyed my rope house," she said, and kept flying on the rope that replaced it. Behind her, every broken knot pulled harder toward Hadria Dern's royal winch. The pull did not name Hadria's hand. It proved only that the false line had changed after it entered the custody her office controlled. Adelise refused to let the royal winch turn again until the injured dragon's replacement spool was lowered onto neutral trestles. Hadria Dern stood beside the sealed feed housing. The black thread marks quartermaster routing. It does not certify fiber, authorize splicing, or prove my office altered the line. Then the spool will answer for material and sequence, not intent. Lysander Corve opened one narrow review. The cable that had carried the injured dragon's cradle. He sealed the winch drum, feed housing, correction cord, exposed cable, failed knots, and his burn order beneath separate witnesses. He did not apologize. Adelise's guild mark remained in his hand, and the condemnation of her rope house remained in force. He was testing a cable after burning the house built to test all of them. She received temporary standing only as a load path witness. She could direct one fiber count, one heat memory test, and the custody review attached to that spool. She could not inspect every replacement line, reopen Hugh Wrenlock's death, or resume guild authority. The spool was brought down by 4 ground teams, while dragons waited on stone ledges rather than trusting the suspended cradles. Wind moved through the empty pulleys with a low metallic mourning. Adelise marked 12 cutting points. Outer gloss, middle braid, inner load core. Count each layer separately. A neutral rope right cut the first sample. The outer braid was genuine fire-hemp. The middle layer mixed fire-hemp with mountain flax. The inner core carried marsh-reed softened in resin beneath a narrow fire-hemp sleeve. The crown inventory called the spool full-core fire-hemp. Hadria examined the sample. A supplier may reinforce a temporary line with secondary fiber during shortage. Then the inventory should name a composite line. It may be a field substitution made after quartermaster issue, which is why we traced the weight. The remaining samples repeated the pattern. Fire-hemp formed enough surface to pass a glance inspection. Marsh-reed carried most of the hidden load. One spool did not prove every replacement cable false. It proved the line above the injured dragon's cradle had been represented as fire-hemp, while its load-bearing core was not. The weight certificate listed the spool at 482 pounds before issue. No Wrenlock seal appeared. The certifier was a quartermaster store clerk trained to weigh cargo, not identify rope fiber. Hadria said, "Weight confirms quantity, not composition. That is ordinary stores practice. Not when the certificate replaces rope-right inspection." The issue order cited emergency procurement authority granted after the siege. Quartermaster stores could release pre-certified cable without heat memory testing when mountain towers faced urgent need. Lysander's seal stood beneath the authority. Adelise did not let his silence become remorse. "You removed the test because speed felt safer than doubt. I allowed emergency issue after 3 towers lost lift access, and then burned the house that objected to the replacement." The statement entered the record without reply. Adelise heated 3 failed knots over a shielded ember trough while neutral clerks marked the contraction. A genuine Wrenlock knot should remember the low Hauyoni bench to curing rail, then from rail to winch. Its inner strands would tighten in one continuous direction. These knots behaved differently. The outer turns contracted toward Adelise's tying pattern. The inner core pulled backward toward the quartermaster feed housing. Hadria said, "Different fibers carry heat at different rates." "Yes, that explains unequal speed. It does not explain opposite sequence." Adelise separated 1 knot under glass. The Wrenlock binding had been tied around a full-thickness rope, then loosened, slid off, and retightened around a narrower, rewrapped core. The knot pattern was hers. The cable beneath it had changed afterward. The Embercord did not identify who performed the rewrapping. It established that the guild knot predated the false inner braid. The quartermaster correction cord had been added later to restore the spool's listed circumference. Lysander asked when the spool entered the yard. The receiving ledger placed it 7 months after Hugh's death. Its acceptance line carried no rope-right witness. In the margin, the yardmaster had written, "Wrenlock review omitted under prior failure finding." Adelise's hands remained steady. Hugh's condemned line had become the reason no Wrenlock rope-right inspected the cable that replaced it. Hadria said, "The prior finding had royal force. Yard officers were entitled to rely on it." Who requested the omission? The receiving order carried a quartermaster procurement code used by 3 senior officers, including Hadria. No personal signature appeared. Again, the chain entered her office without naming her hand. The spool arrived from the Western Rope Depot wrapped in black inventory thread. Its supplier certificate named pure fire-hemp. The depot weight matched quartermaster intake, but no fiber sample survived. Adelise requested only the attachments tied to this spool. 1 page recorded circumference before yard entry. Another recorded circumference after feed housing correction. The second measurement was larger by 2 fingers. Why add a correction cord if the spool arrived complete? To fit the royal drum, Hadria said. Then the original line was too narrow, or the drum guide had widened. The winch master produced 9 years of guide measurements. They had not changed. The correction enlarged the false cable to imitate genuine fire-hemp. That did not prove Hadria ordered it. It proved the quartermaster-controlled receiving process accepted, corrected, and issued a cable whose core could not bear the listed load. Adelise asked for Hugh's preserved evidence box. Lysander did not open his full death file. He allowed only the cut end cited in the old failure finding to be compared with the current spool. The box arrived, scorched at one corner from the rope house fire. Inside lay 6 inches of the line Hugh had held above the nesting cliffs. Its outer braid carried the Wrenlock pattern. Its inner fibers had never been counted. Adelise lifted the cut end with iron tongs and warmed it above the ember trough. The knot contracted toward the eastern nesting winch. Then a buried strand tightened beneath the braid. Black thread emerged from the core. The same quartermaster inventory thread hidden around the current replacement spool. The matching thread did not solve Hugh's death. It did not prove Hadria ordered either substitution. It proved the false custody path had existed before the court blamed the dead rope-right for the first broken line. The thread did not name the hand that changed Hugh's rope. It proved only that his failure had passed through the same hidden quartermaster route before his work was condemned. Adelise placed Hugh's preserved cut end beside the certified failure report and asked that neither be treated as the truth until the missing attachments were traced. Hadria Dern kept her gaze on the black thread beneath the braid. The Western Depot certified that line before quartermaster stores received it. Routing thread marks custody after acceptance. It does not prove my office altered the rope or the finding. Then the old file will show what was examined before acceptance became judgment. Lysander Corve opened Hugh Wrenlock's prior failure finding, its custody history, and the procurement exception created from it. He did not apologize. Adelise's guild mark remained in his possession, and the ropehouse condemnation remained active. She received temporary standing only as an old failure custody witness. She could compare the certified report with its original sketches, witness notes, and evidence box access. She could not reopen Hugh's death as wrongful killing, inspect every eastern line, or resume guild authority. The report blamed poor knotwork. It described a load knot slipping under sudden weight, outer turns collapsing, and the cable separating where Hugh's hands had tied the final binding. The conclusion called the rope sound before failure and named Wrenlock technique as the first defect. Adelise read the phrasing twice. Where is the original tension sketch? The archive clerk produced a folded sheet from the lower file. It had been drawn by flight engineer Brannock Vale before Hugh's body was recovered. 3 arrows marked the cargo platform, the eastern winch, and the nesting ledge below. A dark break ran through the inner load core several feet above Hugh's knot. The outer binding remained intact in the sketch. The core had collapsed first. Hadria said, "A preliminary drawing made during rescue cannot outweigh a certified structural review." No, but a certified review must explain why it reversed the sequence. The final report did not mention the inner core break. Its copied diagram moved the first failure downward until it sat inside Hugh's knot. Lysander asked who redrew it. The certification page carried a flightwork seal and a quartermaster material notation. No individual drafter was named. The alteration did not prove Hadria ordered it. It proved the official finding placed the break where the surviving field sketch had not. Adelise requested the rope-right witness attachment. The index listed one statement from master ropemaker Even Crail, who had examined the fallen line before quartermaster removal. The attachment was missing. The archive retained only its summary. Witness observed excessive knot compression, consistent with poor hand tension. Adelise looked at the wording. A rope-right would not call that hand tension without opening the core. Even Crail still lived at the southern tower. He was questioned by Signal Mirror under oath. "I did not write that summary," he said. "What did you observe?" The knot was crushed from above. Hugh's turns held until the inner braid shortened inside them. I requested a fiber opening before any blame was entered. Was one performed? Not while I remained. Did you sign a finding against Hugh? No. His testimony did not clear Hugh's entire line. It established that the only rope-right witness had asked for a core inspection and had not concluded knot failure. The original note was missing. Hadria's counsel said a clerk could have summarized it badly during emergency recovery. Removal of an attachment does not prove intentional suppression. Then trace who received the file after Crail's examination, Adelise said. The custody ledger showed Eastern Flightworks sending the rope segment, tension sketch, and witness note to quartermaster stores for material review. The box returned 2 days later with the rope sealed and the witness attachment no longer listed among active exhibits. A material review stamp replaced it. No fiber count accompanied the stamp, only weight. The old Western Depot certificate had been copied from that weight sheet. It repeated the rope's gross mass, circumference through your slot, then declared full core fire-hemp without recording a single opened strand. Hadria said, "Depot officers relied on Crown Material certification. The Crown Material certification relied on a closed rope. The line may still have matched fire, hemp weight. Marsh-reed soaked in heavy resin can imitate it. The same concealment later found in the current spool had been possible then. The file did not prove Hugh's cable contained marsh-reed. His cut end carried the hidden quartermaster thread, but only a neutral opening could establish its full composition. Lysander allowed one microscopic fiber lift from the preserved end. Adelise did not cut the evidence. She eased a loose inner strand from the exposed break with bone tweezers. The fiber drank heat instead of shedding it. Marsh-reed was possible. So were 2 mountain fibers damaged by rain. The sample was too small for a final classification. Hugh was not cleared. The conclusion against his knot was no longer secure. The certified failure finding became royal authority 6 days after his death. It allowed emergency procurement of replacement lines without Wrenlock heat memory review because the Wrenlock method itself had been named unsafe. That exception bore Lysander's siege seal. "I signed it after 2 towers lost lift service," he said. "You signed away the test that might have shown the rope beneath Hugh's knot was false. I relied on the certified finding. You signed speed onto a conclusion that had already lost its witness, and then burned the house that preserved what the finding omitted." He did not answer. The procurement code attached to the exception belonged to 3 senior quartermasters, including Hadria. It authorized Western Depot purchases, direct yard delivery, and substitution of weight certification for rope right inspection. Hadria said, "Shared authority proves procedure, not personal design." Adelise accepted the limit. She asked when quartermaster stores first requested Hugh's evidence box. The custody ledger gave the date. 2 days after his death. 4 days before the certified report blamed his knot. The request reason read, "Replacement, standard preparation." The box had been opened for future procurement before the past failure had been certified. The signature line was blank, but the routing code belonged to Hadria Dern's quartermaster office. The code did not prove Hadria made the request. It proved her office began preparing the replacement system before Hugh's supposed fault had become an official finding. The request did not name Hadria's hand. It proved the replacement path was being built before the blame it needed had been certified. Adelise asked for the first draft of the replacement standard before Hadria could call advance preparation ordinary caution. Mountain towers cannot wait for a death inquiry to close before replacement work begins, Hadria Dern said. Preparing specifications before certification is responsible procurement, not proof that the conclusion was predetermined. Then the draft should not already know which method the final report would condemn. Lysander Corve opened the replacement standard preparation file, the Western Depot contract, and the quartermaster template attached to them. He did not apologize. Adelise's guild mark remained in his possession, and the rope house condemnation remained active. Her temporary standing widened only to replacement standard review. She could compare draft language, dates, supplier requirements, and load templates tied to Hugh's failed line. She could not reopen every procurement lot, restore Wrenlock inspection authority, or declare Hugh's death resolved. The first draft was dated 3 days after Hugh fell. Its heading read Model Failure, Eastern Nesting Lift. The final report blaming his knot would not be certified for another 3 days. Under cause, the draft stated, Wrenlock hand binding compresses under sudden descent load. No rope-right witness had yet signed that conclusion. No opened court test had been performed. Hadria read the date and remained composed. Draft standards use provisional causes. They are revised as evidence develops. Was this one revised? The second draft preserved the same sentence and added a remedy. Omit Wrenlock heat. Memory review from emergency replacement stock until the unsafe method is independently corrected. The phrase prior unsafe method appeared in the margin. Its ink had dried before Lysander's siege seal turned the final failure report into royal authority. Adelise laid the date marks side by side. Hugh's method was called unsafe before the Crown certified that his knot failed. A procurement draft is not a verdict, Hadria said. No, but your later contract treated it as one. The Western Depot agreement ordered replacement cable for 12 mountain lifts. It required fire-hemp appearance, listed circumference, and certified load weight. It required black quartermaster routing thread, weather resin, and compatibility with royal winch drums. It did not require an opened core fiber count. It did not require Embercord heat memory. It did not require a Ropewright Guild witness. Hadria's council said the depot supplied finished rope under its own material guarantee. Quartermaster stores purchased to specification. They did not weave the line. Who wrote the specification? The contract carried a shared procurement code used by Hadria and 2 senior officers. No personal drafter appeared. Again, her office stood inside the chain without naming her hand. The Western Depot clerk, Mara Venn, testified by signal mirror. She had copied the supplier certificate from the crown template sent with the order. "Did your depot open the rope core?" Adelise asked. "No. The contract did not require destructive sampling. How did you certify full core fire-hemp?" "We matched gross weight, circumference, burn gloss, and the load number supplied by quartermaster stores." "Did the depot determine that load number?" "No." "Did you test it?" "We suspended stone weight from one finished length." "How much?" "The listed crown load." The depot had proved the line could bear one controlled test under ground conditions. It had not proved the inner fiber was fire-hemp or that the cable would survive repeated mountain heat, lateral swing, and dragon cradle shock. Hadria said, "The depot met the contract Lysander's emergency authority allowed." Adelise turned toward the king. "You made a preliminary accusation into the rule that decided what no supplier had to test. I authorized speed after the Eastern Towers lost service. You authorized a standard written before the witness was heard." He did not ask her to call necessity innocence. The preparation file contained a comparison table between Hugh's line and the proposed replacement stock. Hugh's rope was listed at 482 pounds. The current false spool from the injured dragon's cradle carried the same listed weight. Adelise looked at Hugh's original material sheet. His finished line had weighed 511 pounds before yard issue. Hadria said, "Weather loss and trimming may explain the difference." "Not before installation." The original sheet carried Adelise's guild countersign and 3 curing weights taken across 2 days. All remained above 500 pounds. The number 482 had never belonged to Hugh's finished rope. It belonged to the current replacement spool. The draft standard had copied the replacement spool's load weight backward into Hugh's model failure. Lysander asked when that number first entered the file. The earliest appearance was on a quartermaster template dated 1 day before the Western Depot received its contract. The template described the desired replacement cable, 480, 2 pounds, Wrenlock circumference, fire, hemp appearance, no heat, memory requirement. It also appeared on the certified material summary later attached to Hugh's failure report. Hadria's counsel said a clerk may have standardized the old file after replacement procurement began. A later template could have been copied into an earlier record during archive consolidation. Then the original ink order will show it. The archive examiner placed the failure summary beneath angled emberlight. The load number had been added after the main text but before the certification seal. The number was not part of the first field record. It entered during quartermaster material review. That did not prove Hadria wrote it or knew the proposed replacement line used marsh-reed. It proved the material summary blaming Hugh had been adjusted to match a replacement specification already in preparation. Adelise asked for the template source worksheet. 1 page survived. Its upper half listed supplier targets. Its lower half compared projected cost between genuine fire-hemp and resin-weighted composite rope. The cheaper line matched the 482-pound target. No approval appeared beside the comparison. No note said which material the Crown ultimately chose. But the cost column carried a private military contract mark used when quartermaster. Hadria said, "Cost projections are ordinary. A private contract mark may reserve surplus, not authorize substitution." Then where is the genuine fire-hemp target? The line had been scraped away. Pressure marks remained beneath it. Adelise dusted the page with cold ash. Genuine fire-hemp, 511 pounds. Composite substitute, 480. The replacement standard template had not copied Hugh's rope. It had copied the cheaper alternative and then rewritten Hugh's evidence to match it. Adelise asked that the scraped cost sheet be sealed apart from Hugh's failure file before anyone called the cheaper line an approved choice. Hadria Dern stood beside the witness table. A comparison between genuine fire, hemp, and composite rope does not prove the Crown purchased the cheaper option. Procurement officers price alternatives before selecting material. Then the allocation records will show which lot entered royal service and which left it. Lysander Corve opened the contract mark register, the lot allocation sheet, and one private military agreement connected to the £482 target. He did not apologize. Adelise's guild mark remained in his possession, and the condemnation of her rope house remained active. Her temporary standing widened only to the destination of the material named on the replacement standard worksheet. She could compare one royal lot, one private lot, and the custody marks between them. She could not inspect every military contract, reopen Hugh's death, or restore guild inspection authority. The contract mark belonged to the Black Airy cohort, a private mountain force hired to guard merchant passes during the siege. Quartermaster stores supplied the cohort with cable, winch hooks, and fireproof harness. Hadria's council said private contracts kept remote towers supplied when royal stores were strained. They were lawful. Lawful contracts still require lawful material descriptions, Adelise said. The Black Airy Agreement ordered full-core fire-hemp suitable for armed descent under dragonfire. Its listed weight was 511 pounds per spool, Hugh's true line weight. The royal replacement order called for 482. The cheaper composite target. 2 rope lots had been purchased from the Western Depot during the same week. Lot Red 7 weighed 511 pounds and carried opened core certification from an independent ropewright. Lot Grey 12 weighed 482 and carried only appearance, circumference, and ground load approval. The Royal Allocation Ledger assigned Red 7 to the Sky Winch Yard. Grey 12 was assigned to Black Airy. The receiving records showed the reverse. Hadria looked at the page. A field exchange may have occurred. Private forces sometimes need stronger material for exposed combat routes. Then the exchange order should state why injured royal dragons received the weaker lot. No exchange order appeared. The lot tags had been removed before delivery and replaced with black quartermaster thread. The thread recorded destination, not fiber class. The hidden routing system had made 2 unlike ropes appear administratively equal. Lysander asked who could reverse allocations. 3 senior quartermasters, the Western Depot master, or a siege logistics officer under emergency seal. Hadria was one of the 3. The record did not identify which authority had been used. Adelise requested the payment difference. The Crown paid the Western Depot genuine fire-hemp price for both lots. Black Airy paid a second premium for Red 7 under its private contract. Grey 12 entered royal service at the higher price, despite costing less to produce. The difference moved into a quartermaster contingency account used for emergency transport, damaged stock, and remote garrison supply. Not Hadria's personal account, not proof of private enrichment, but the same account funded performance bonuses for officers who reduced siege procurement delays. Hadria said, savings returned to military readiness. No officer controlled those funds alone. Who certified the savings? A finance clerk. Using which material cost? The finance ledger listed Grey 12 as full fire-hemp. The cheaper composite had not been recorded as cheaper. The account received money created by charging genuine price for false material, while the private cohort received the genuine lot and paid a premium. Hadria's counsel called the discrepancy a supplier billing error. The Western Depot may have misdeclared Grey 12. Mara Venn, the depot clerk, was recalled by signal mirror. Did the depot know Grey 12 contained composite fiber? Adelise asked. Yes. It was ordered as resin-weighted emergency cable. By whom? The Crown template named no individual. It carried the quartermaster procurement code. Did you invoice it as full fire? Hemp? No. Our invoice named composite load core with fire-hemp outer braid. The Crown copy did not. Somewhere between depot dispatch and royal payment, the material description had changed. The depot was not innocent of weak design. It had manufactured the composite line, but it did not claim the rope was genuine fire-hemp. Adelise asked for the original invoice seal. The depot's copy carried blue wax. The Crown Archive held a black wax duplicate with the composite line removed. Hadria said, "Copies may be reformatted for treasury categories." Reformatted from what into what? Emergency cable may fall under fire, resistant rope even if its core is mixed. Then the Royal Winch inventory should say mixed. It said full core fire-hemp. The alteration did not prove Hadria personally changed the invoice. It proved quartermaster accounting converted a disclosed composite lot into genuine material before issuing it to the yard. Lysander opened the officer bonus sheet tied to the contingency account. Hadria received no direct payment for Grade 12. 2 junior officers received speed bonuses. 1 senior quartermaster received a contract efficiency award. Quartermaster Olin Var. Hadria seized the opening. "There is your approving officer." "No," Adelise said. "There is one beneficiary. The chain still decides who changed the rope, who changed the paper, and who allowed it to fly." Aline's award did not remove Hadria's office from the allocation reversal. It added another hand the court had not examined. The Black Airy delivery file contained one final attachment. A Rope-You-Right Heat, memory certificate for Red 7. Adelise recognized the knot signatures. They belonged to 2 apprentices from her own guild, both dismissed after Hugh's failure finding made Wrenlock review unacceptable for Crown lines. Their work had been rejected for royal dragons and accepted for private soldiers. The certificate date fell after Hugh's condemnation but before Lysander burned Adelise's rope house. Beneath the guild's signatures stood a quartermaster approval, Hadria Dern's personnel seal. She did not deny it. "I approved a private contract that satisfied its stated inspection terms. You approved Wrenlock heat memory for the rope sold privately while your office omitted it from the rope flown beneath royal dragons. The contracts carried different emergency requirements. The stronger contract received the test you called unsafe." Hadria's composure held, but the defense had narrowed. Adelise asked which lot Hugh's evidence box weight had been used to justify. The preparation file answered, "Not Grey 12. Red 7. The genuine lot sold to Black Airy had been certified against Hugh's original 511-pound rope. The false royal spool had been certified against the altered 482-pound summary. Hugh's evidence had been split in 2. His true weight sold the genuine rope. The false weight condemned his name and sent the weaker line into royal flight. Adelise laid the 511-pound record and the 482-pound summary on separate slates. "Do not let one certificate answer for both ropes," she said. "The true weight sold the genuine line. The altered weight sent the weaker one into royal flight." Hadria Dern remained composed. "Benchmark weights may be reused across procurement classes. That does not prove anyone split Hugh's evidence deliberately. Then the certification numbers will show whether the records remained separate." Lysander Corve opened one limited review, the certificate chain for Red 7 and Grey 12, the apprentice testimony attached to the genuine lot, and the approval path through Quartermaster Olin Var. He did not apologize. Adelise's guild mark remained in his possession, and her burned rope house remained condemned. Her temporary standing widened only to duplicate certification. She could compare the 2 lot files, inspect the witness marks, and question the Rope-You-Rights whose signatures had been accepted for private soldiers but rejected for royal dragons. She could not reopen every contract, restore guild authority, or declare Hugh's line sound. The Red 7 certificate carried a complete heat memory path, curing rail to testing beam to descent drum to weighted drop. Each Embercord sample contracted in one continuous direction. The inner core shed heat without drinking it. 2 dismissed Wrenlock apprentices had signed the result, Nella Quist and Corin Ash. The certificate number was R7113. Grey 12's royal issue sheet carried the same number. No apprentice signatures appeared. No heat memory diagram survived. The copied line read, "Certified fire-resistant load rope under emergency standard." Hadria's counsel said the number might refer to a shared contract batch rather than one physical spool. The depot clerk shook her head from the signal mirror. "Our certificate numbers identify individual tested lots. They are never shared." The Royal Archive had used a genuine lot certificate number to support a different rope. That did not identify who copied it. It established that Grey 12 entered royal service beneath proof created for Red 7. Nella Quist was questioned first. She had been 17 when Hugh died and 20 when Hadria's private contract called her back to inspect the black airy rope. "Why did you accept the work?" Adelise asked. "Because the order said private military stock still required guild heat memory. Did you know royal replacement lines no longer required it?" "Yes." "Did you question the difference?" "I was told the Crown had suspended Wrenlock review because Master Hugh's method had failed under royal load." Corin Ash gave the same answer. Neither apprentice had seen Grey 12. Neither had authorized their certificate for another lot. Their testimony did not prove Hadria ordered the duplicate. It proved the quartermaster office used Wrenlock's skill, where a private buyer demanded safety while withholding the same test from the Crown lines justified by Hugh's condemnation. Olin Var appeared before the Yard Tribunal in a dark logistics coat. "I approved the allocation exchange," she said. "Black Airy paid for combat, grade rope, and required opened core proof. Royal emergency stock met the standard then in force." "Who decided the royal standard could be lower?" Adelise asked. "The King's siege exception removed guild testing." "The exception removed a test. It did not authorize a false certificate." Oline's expression tightened. "I did not prepare the certificate copy." "Who instructed you to reverse the lots?" "The quartermaster planning table." "Whose order?" "A shared procurement directive." Hadria's office again entered the chain without a named hand. The directive stated that private combat obligations must receive certified fire-hemp first, while Royal Lift Service could accept emergency equivalent cables so long as listed load and circumference matched. Emergency equivalent was not defined. No line permitted marsh-reed. No line permitted reuse of another lot's certificate, Hadria said. That language allowed functionally equal rope during shortage. If Grey 12 was falsely described, the failure may belong to depot certification or archive copying. "The depot disclosed composite fiber," Adelise said. "The Crown copy removed it." She asked for the certificate copy desk ledger. One clerk, Perrin Doss, had prepared both the Black Airy packet and the Royal issue packet. He admitted copying R7113 into Grey 12's file. "Why?" Adelise asked. "The template already carried the number." "Who supplied the template?" "Quartermaster planning." "Did you compare the lot tags?" "They had been removed before the files reached me." "Did you know one rope was composite?" "No. Both summaries called them fire-resistant line." Perrin's mistake could have been negligent rather than knowing. The template had placed the false number in his hand before he copied it. The planning worksheet was opened under angled emberlight. Its upper line named Red 7 and R7113. The lower line named Grey 12. Between them, a bracket joined both lots to one certification field. Beside the bracket stood a routing instruction. "Retain opened core proof with private contract. Royal issue may reference certified equivalent." No personal signature appeared. The code belonged to the same 3 senior quartermasters. A line said, "I approved the allocation, not that instruction." Hadria said, "I approved the private contract. Shared planning staff could have linked the files afterward. The evidence had narrowed the office, not the author." Adelise requested the apprentice payment sheet. Nella and Corin had been paid from the Black Airy premium, not Crown inspection funds. Their work had been treated as a private contract cost. A second payment line appeared beneath theirs. Evidence adaptation fee. Recipient, Quartermaster Certification Desk. The phrase did not explain what had been adapted. It proved the office charged the private contract for converting evidence into another usable form. Lysander looked at Hadria. Was that ordinary? No. Who could approve it? The quartermaster general or a senior officer acting under her sealed authority. Hadria was quartermaster general. The payment carried no personal seal. Adelise did not call authority authorship. She asked for the attached work description. The original line had been scraped away. Cold ash lifted the pressure beneath it. Separate true load proof from Royal Failure Standard. Below that sentence stood two numbers. 511 for private certification, 482 for Crown issue. At the bottom appeared a third instruction. Use Wrenlock failure box as source authority before archive closure. The evidence box had not merely been requested early. It had been used to build two different truths from Hugh's rope before the report condemning him was complete. Adelise asked the archive master to weigh Hugh's evidence box against its first recovery receipt. Source authority can mean measurements, samples, or reference diagrams, Hadria Dern said. It does not mean the quartermaster office rewrote the event. Then the missing weight will show what the office kept. Lysander Corve opened the evidence adaptation order, the box weight history, and the recovery attachments connected to Hugh's line. He did not apologize. Adelise's guild mark remained in his possession, and the rope house condemnation remained active. Her temporary standing widened only to the material removed from Hugh's evidence box before archive closure. She could compare contents, cuts, and tension diagrams. She could not reopen his death as a completed judgment, inspect every eastern lift, or resume guild authority. He had opened the omitted evidence while still enforcing the judgment built from its absence. The first recovery receipt listed 31 pounds of evidence, 13 feet of failed cargo cable, 5 feet of Hugh's personal descent line, 1 load knot, 1 bronze harness hook, 1 rope knife recovered beside his right hand. When the box returned from quartermaster material review, it weighed 8 pounds. The archive held 6 inches of cargo cable, the load knot, and the hook. The longer cable section, the personal line, and the knife were absent. Hadria's counsel said destructive testing often consumed rope evidence. A laboratory may open the braid, burn samples, or separate strands without returning unusable material. Then the test record should name what was consumed. The adaptation order authorized retention of representative lengths for replacement standard preparation. It did not authorize destruction of the knife or removal of the entire personal line. The signature field carried the shared procurement code. Again, the order entered Hadria's office without naming her hand. Oline Var said quartermaster planning had requested both rope lengths because one showed load failure and the other showed emergency release. Emergency release? Adelise asked. Oline looked toward the old index. That was the laboratory classification. The certified report contained no emergency release. It described 1 rope, 1 failed knot, and Hugh falling when his own binding slipped. Adelise requested the laboratory intake. 2 samples had arrived under separate letters. Failure Model A, internal load, core collapse above knot. Failure Model B, clean blade release under active tension. The first described the cargo cable. The second described Hugh's personal descent line. Someone had examined 2 different failures before the final report reduced them to 1. Hadria said, "A clean cut may prove panic, sabotage, or improper rescue. It does not clear his knotwork. No, it proves the report omitted a second line whose failure was not a knot failure. The material laboratory had drawn both cuts. Model A showed broken inner fibers drawn thin and frayed, with the outer Wrenlock turns still compressed around them. Model B showed a smooth diagonal cut through a sound fire-hemp line. Heat darkening along one edge indicated the rope had been carrying full tension when the knife passed through it. The clean cut did not occur because the line snapped. Someone cut it. Lysander asked whether the laboratory identified whose blade made the cut. No comparison survived. The missing knife mattered. Adelise requested its first recovery description. The rope knife carried Hugh's initials, a chipped lower edge, and dark fire-hemp residue near the point. That did not prove Hugh used it during the fall. Another rescuer could have handled it. The blade could have contacted rope earlier. The Eastern recovery sketch supplied sequence instead of identity. The main cargo line failed above Hugh's knot. The platform dropped toward the lower nesting shelf. Hugh remained suspended on his personal line beside the east brake rail. Then the personal lines separated cleanly. The certified diagram had removed the second line and moved the clean-cut symbol into the cargo knot. Hadria's counsel objected that rescue sketches were provisional. The final engineering board may have concluded both marks belonged to one rope. Where is that reasoning? Adelise asked. No board note explained the merger. The adaptation worksheet did. Combine release cut with Wrenlock binding failure for standard clarity. The instruction carried no signature. It converted two physical events into one simplified cause before the final report blamed Hugh's hands. Lysander looked at the page. Was simplification ordinary? The flight engineer answered. Not when separate lines carried separate loads. Adelise asked for the rescue climber's statement. Captain Soren Pell had descended after the platform struck the outer cliff brace. He remembered seeing Hugh alive between the first core failure and the final drop. What was he doing? Adelise asked through the signal mirror. Reaching across the brake rail. With which hand? His left held the rail. His right held something bright. The knife? I believed so. Did you see him cut the line? No. Smoke crossed the ledge. Soren's testimony did not establish intent. It placed Hugh alive after the cargo core failed and beside the emergency brake before his own line was cut. The Eastern winch log recorded the brake engaging at the same moment the personal line lost tension. The brake had not been pulled from the upper yard. Its lower release arm required a downward load from the cliff rail. Adelise traced the recovery diagram. Hugh's personal line crossed that arm. Hadria said, a falling body could engage it accidentally. Yes, accident remained possible. So did deliberate release. The nest beneath the platform had been recorded as empty in the certified incident report. The Dragon Keeper roll said otherwise. 3 unflighted young dragons had been sheltering there during the storm. The platform's original fall path crossed their nesting shelf. After the brake engaged, the load swung outward and struck the cliff brace instead. The change saved the nest. It did not prove Hugh knew the young dragons remained below, or that he cut his line for them. Adelise asked for the missing personal line test fragment. The laboratory archive held one strand overlooked beneath a wax fold. She warmed it over a shielded ember. The ember cord contracted away from Hugh's harness. It pulled toward the lower brake arm. The knot remembered the final true load, not the reason behind it. But Hugh's line had not failed where the court said it had. It had carried his full weight into the emergency brake after the cargo core was already broken. At the cut edge, the laboratory had marked one final observation. The severing was consistent with controlled blade pressure, applied while the line remained under full load. Adelise asked that the eastern brake rail be reconstructed before the court called Hugh's controlled cut either panic or sacrifice. A deliberate blade stroke proves only that someone chose release, Hadria Dern said. It does not prove why, and it does not prove the cargo rope was counterfeit. Then the load path will answer what the cut changed. Lysander Corve opened one narrow reconstruction, the lower brake arm, the nesting, shelf occupancy, and the cargo manifest carried on Hugh's final lift. He did not apologize. Adelise's guild mark remained in his possession, and the condemnation of her rope house remained active. Her temporary standing widened only to Hugh's final load sequence. She could compare the platform path before and after the personal line was cut. She could not declare his death solved, inspect every cargo contract, or resume guild authority. The eastern nesting lift had used a twin brake system. The upper yard lever slowed the winch drum. The lower arm, mounted beside the cliff rail, pulled the guide cable sideways and forced a falling platform away from the nesting shelf. Under ordinary operation, a rope team engaged it from below. During Hugh's fall, No team stood there. His personal descent line crossed the lower arm at a steep angle. Adelise asked the neutral engineers to rig an empty platform at 1/10 load. They marked the path with ash pennants and released the main line under controlled tension. Without the lower brake, the platform fell toward the nesting shelf. With Hugh's line attached to the arm and cut under load, the sudden release pulled the brake downward. The guide cable shifted. The platform swung outward and struck the cliff brace. The same movement recorded in the recovery sketch. Hadrian's counsel said, "A falling body could create that result by accident." "Yes," Adelise said. "So we test whether Hugh's body fell before or after the brake engaged." The winch log preserved 2 tension drops. The first belonged to the broken cargo core. The second came 11 heartbeats later, when the personal line was cut. Between them, Hugh's harness remained under full weight. The lower brake engaged at the second drop. If Hugh had already fallen, his line could not have remained taut enough for controlled blade pressure. He had been suspended beside the arm when the cut was made. That established sequence. It did not yet establish motive. Adelise requested the Dragonkeeper roll for the eastern shelf. 3 young dragons had been moved there before the storm because smoke had entered their upper nursery. Their names were Aster, Brindle, and Kesh. The keeper signed the relocation at dawn. The certified incident report listed the shelf as empty. "Who changed the occupancy?" Lysander asked. The original roll had passed through flight command, then quartermaster review because the falling platform carried military cargo. The final copy returned with the 3 names omitted and the shelf marked closed for weather. Hadria said, "Nest records are not maintained by my office. A flight clerk may have copied the wrong status. Then the keeper's warning should still survive." It did. A messenger strip reached the eastern winch 20 minutes before the lift began. Young dragons below, no descent over inner path. Hugh had signed receipt. The warning did not state that he intended to cut his own line. It proved he knew the nest was occupied before the platform fell. Captain Soren Pell was recalled. "Did Hugh say anything after the first cable broke?" Adelise asked. "Only one word." "What word?" "Below." The captain had believed Hugh meant the brake rail. Now the keeper strip gave the word another weight. Hadria's counsel objected that memory after 3 years could bend toward a new theory. Soren accepted the concern. "I cannot swear what he meant. I can swear he looked toward the nesting shelf." Adelise did not ask the court to call that certainty. She asked for the rope knife angle. The laboratory drawing showed the blade entering from Hugh's right side, cutting outward and downward. A panic cut toward the body would have drawn the blade inward. The outward stroke kept the severed line from whipping across the nest. Master Even Crail confirmed the technique. That is an emergency load, release cut. Ropewrights use it when the line itself must pull a brake or gate before separation. Did Hugh know the method? He taught it. The evidence now established that Hugh remained alive after the cargo core failed. New young dragons occupied the shelf, positioned his personal line across the lower brake arm, and cut it under controlled load. The cut redirected the platform away from the nest. It still did not establish whether he expected to survive. The cliff brace shattered on impact. Hugh's body fell below the smoke line before rescuers reached him. Adelise's hands rested flat on the witness table. The court had called his last knot a failure. His final rope action had been the only part of the system that worked as designed. Lysander looked at the 3 young dragons, now grown and watching from the upper ledge. He did not apologize. He opened the cargo manifest. The platform had been recorded as carrying siege hooks, grain sacks, and 2 replacement rope spools for the eastern towers. Listed weight, 14,000 pounds. The recovery crane measured nearly 17,000. Hadria said, "Stormwater and broken stone may have added weight after impact. Not 3,000 pounds. The original loading sheet listed 4 rope spools, not 2. 2 lines had been removed from the certified manifest after the collapse. Their lot numbers were Red 7 and Red 8. Genuine fire-hemp. Both were scheduled for Royal Tower service. Neither entered the Skywinch yard. The quartermaster review changed the manifest to 2 unnamed replacement spools and reduced the listed weight before Hugh's failure report was certified. The alteration did not prove Hadria ordered the change. It proved Hugh's platform had been carrying more genuine fire-hemp than the court later admitted. Adelise asked where Red 7 and Red 8 went after recovery. Red 7 appeared in the Blackberry contract already opened. Red 8 had no royal receiving record. Its destination line carried a private military contract code. At the bottom of the altered cargo manifest stood one release authorization, not the shared procurement mark, Hadria Dern's personnel cell. The seal did not prove she ordered the cargo line weakened or intended Hugh's death. It proved she personally released genuine fire-hemp from the load whose false weight later condemned him. Adelise separated Hadria's personal release from the altered cargo manifest and asked where Red 8 went after the platform struck the cliff brace. A recovery release authorizes salvage after impact, Hadria Dern said. It does not prove I knew the certified manifest had been reduced or that the cargo line would fail. Then the post-collapse custody will show whether you released damaged rope or redirected sound material. Lysander Corve opened one narrow chain. Red 8's recovery condition, its private contract transfer, and the replacement purchase funded afterward. He did not apologize. Adelise's guild mark remained in his possession, and the rope house condemnation remained active. Her temporary standing widened only to the custody of that one genuine fire-hemp spool. She could compare its recovery description, sale condition, and the royal line purchased in its place. She could not inspect every private contract, restore guild authority, or declare Hugh's death the result of Hadria's decision. The first recovery sheet described Red 8 as smoke-marked but structurally intact. Its outer wrap had torn when the platform struck the cliff brace. The core remained dry. The spool's Embercord test showed one continuous load memory from western curing rail to eastern cargo platform. No broken strands. No marsh fiber. No reason it could not have entered Royal Tower service after reinspection. Hadria read the sheet without withdrawing her defense. The eastern towers needed immediate cable. A recovered spool tied to a fatal incident could not be cleared quickly enough. Yet a private buyer cleared it. The Blackberry contract received Red 8 6 days after Hugh's death. Its new certificate named Battle-Grade Fire-Hemp, opened core verified, suitable for repeated descent under Dragonfire. Nelaquist and Coron Ash had performed the test. Neither knew the spool had been recovered from Hugh's platform. Quartermaster Stores presented it as unused siege reserve. The private contract paid nearly twice the crown purchase price. Hadria said, Blackberry assumed battlefield risk and paid for expedited certification. The premium returned to military supply. Which supply? The contingency account used the payment to purchase 3 Grey Series composite spools from the Western Depot. One of them became the false line above the injured dragon's cradle. The exchange was now visible. One genuine recovered spool left royal service under Hadria's personal seal. Its premium financed 3 cheaper composite lines. Quartermaster Accounting later described those lines as full-core fire-hemp. That sequence did not prove Hadria ordered anyone to falsify the descriptions. It proved her release decision made the substitution system possible. Adelise requested the approval for the Grey Series purchase. The order carried Alinvar's contract efficiency mark and Hadria's senior countersign. Its material line read emergency equivalent fire-resistant rope. Equivalent to what? Adelise asked. Listed load and circumference, Hadria said. Not heat memory, not opened, core fiber, not mountain shock. The royal standard no longer required those tests. Because Hugh's report had been rewritten to call them unsafe, Hadria's gaze hardened. Because 12 towers were operating under siege shortage. Genuine fire, hemp required months of curing. Composite rope could be produced in weeks. There was the motive she had not previously named. Not random theft. A supply system built to conceal scarcity, preserve private military obligations, and keep every royal lift appearing operational. Adelise did not let necessity become truth. Then the Crown should have grounded the towers or named the lower load. Grounding them would have stranded wounded dragons and isolated the northern nests. So you kept them flying on rope whose weakness the riders were never told. I kept the kingdom connected, with Hugh's name carrying the danger. The contract files showed Hadria had petitioned twice for reduced royal load limits. Both petitions had been denied by Flight Command because public acknowledgement of rope shortage would weaken siege confidence. Lysander's War Council had ordered all towers to remain at full listed capacity. His seal did not appear on the composite purchase. It appeared on the order that made honest reduction politically impossible. He read it in silence. Adelise turned to him. You demanded full strength from stores you had allowed to stop proving it. I did not know the core had changed. You made not knowing sufficient for flight. He did not answer. The Grey Series purchase included a private instruction to apply fire-hemp outer braid, resin weight, and Wrenlock-compatible circumference before crown delivery. The instruction did not mention black routing thread. A later quartermaster workshop note added it. Use internal inventory cord to preserve lot control after outer tags are removed. The note bore Hadria's hand. She did not deny it. Outer tags caught in feed housings. Internal thread preserved destination identity. It also concealed material class once the tags were gone. That was not its purpose. Purpose does not erase function. The thread now connected Hugh's cut end, the current false spool, and the quartermaster receiving process. But Hugh's line predated the Grey Series purchase by days. Adelise asked when the first black thread composite had been prepared. The workshop ledger named a prototype, Grey 0. Its completion date was 5 days before Hugh's fatal lift. The prototype used genuine fire-hemp outer braid, marsh-reed core, resin weight, and Wrenlock circumference. It had been built to test whether emergency equivalent rope could pass Crown weight standards. The record said it failed, repeated shock testing. Hadria's counsel spoke quickly. A failed prototype is not proof it entered service. Where was it stored? The destination field had been scraped away. Cold ash raised the original line. Eastern Nesting Lift Reserve. The prototype's listed weight was 482 pounds. The same number later written backward into Hugh's failure file. Hadria's composure finally broke into anger. I did not assign a failed prototype to an active lift. Who could? Quartermaster stores, Flight Command, or the Eastern Yard under emergency release. The prototype issue slip was missing. Its return line was blank. The ledger alone could not prove Grey 0 became Hugh's cargo cable. Adelise asked for the prototype's surviving cut sample. Quartermaster testing had retained 1 inch of core beneath wax. When heated, the marsh fiber contracted around a hidden black inventory thread, the same thread inside Hugh's preserved rope. The match did not prove Hadria personally ordered Grey 0 installed or intended the line to break. It proved the rope that failed above Hugh's knot was not merely connected to later substitution practice. It was the failed prototype on which that practice had been built. At the bottom of Grey 0's workshop page stood a final instruction in Hadria's handwriting. If field load holds once, approve emergency class and remove prototype designation. Adelise ordered every flight lift grounded before Hadria's final instruction could be treated as one officer's private failure. No cargo rises, no rider crosses, and no injured dragon hangs beneath a crown line until every active spool receives an opened core count and heat memory test. Lysander Corve gave the order without returning her guild mark. Mountain bells carried the closure from tower to tower, while dragons moved by ledge roads, hand sledges, and grounded recovery teams. Royal cargo waited. The neutral audit began with Grey 0. Its retained core, Hugh's preserved cut end, and the quartermaster workshop sample shared marsh-reed, resin weighting, Wrenlock circumference, and the same black internal thread. Heat memory placed the failed rope in quartermaster testing before it entered the Eastern nesting lift. The prototype designation had been removed after 1 field load. That load had been Hugh's. Hadria Dern stood before the flight tribunal. I authorized emergency classification if the prototype held. she said. "I did not order it installed without clearance. Your instruction made one successful lift sufficient to erase a failed shock test," Adelise replied. "Siege stock had to be evaluated under real conditions, not beneath riders and nesting dragons who were never told they were carrying the test." The missing issue slip was recovered from the Eastern Yard's sealed ash box. It carried a shared emergency release code. The bearer line remained blank. The order did not prove Hadria personally placed Grey Zero on Hugh's lift. Her own records proved enough elsewhere. She had approved internal thread that concealed material class after tags were removed, released genuine fire-hemp into private contracts, countersigned composite purchases, split Hugh's evidence into a true weight for private sale and a false weight for royal issue, and approved emergency classification after one field load despite failed shock testing. Hadria still denied altering the certified failure report. The tribunal did not assign her every hidden hand merely because her system benefited from them. Quartermaster Olin Var was charged with reversing lot allocations and approving false certificate equivalents. Flight Command faced inquiry for demanding full load after reduced limit petitions warned of shortage. Hadria was removed from office and remanded for trial on reckless issue of unverified cable, falsification of material class, unlawful diversion of genuine fire-hemp, misuse of Hugh's evidence, and concealment of failed prototype status. No charge claimed she intended Hugh Wrenlock to die. The old failure finding was reopened before the Winch Yard. Master Even Crail read the original tension sequence. The cargo core failed above Hugh's knot. His binding held. His personal line remained sound until he cut it under full load. The lower brake engaged at the moment of release and pulled the falling platform away from the occupied nesting shelf. Aster, Brindle, and Kesh stood on the upper ledge, grown now, their wings opening in the cold light. The court removed poor knotwork from Hugh's death record. The corrected finding named him as a ropewright who responded to internal cable failure, used a controlled emergency cut, and redirected a falling military platform away from 3 young dragons. It did not claim he knew he would die or that the collapse had been designed to kill him. It recorded what the load path, witness statements, blade angle, brake sequence, and surviving rope could support. Hugh Wrenlock had not failed the line. The line had failed above him. Lysander stepped before Adelise with the brass guild mark in his palm. "I burned the rope house before testing the surviving cord," he said. "I turned a report that had lost its rope-right witness into emergency law. I demanded full tower loads while allowing weight certificates to replace opened core proof. Then I kept the lifts running on the rope that systems supplied." No applause followed. Adelise accepted no royal pardon because skilled work did not become innocent by a king's mercy. The Independent Ropewright Council restored her guild mark after reviewing her surviving knots, yard records, and conduct during the dragon rescue. The Crown corrected the condemnation of the Wrenlock Rope House and funded its rebuilding without taking ownership of the new looms or records. Adelise required the grant to be entered as restitution, not patronage. The new flight law passed before the towers reopened. No cable could enter service without opened core fiber count, Embercord heat memory, repeated shock testing, and an independent ropewright witness. Weight and appearance could not certify material class. Prototype rope could not carry living load. Internal routing thread had to identify destination and fiber composition. Emergency authority could lower load or ground a tower, but not erase a failed test. Flight line inspection passed from quartermaster stores to an independent ropewright guild with Dragonkeeper representation. Adelise opened every active spool before permitting the first lift. 7 contained composite cores and were removed. 4 were genuine fire-hemp but improperly cured. Only 3 passed. The injured dragons remained grounded until new lines were woven, cured, and tested. Lysander's military cargo waited behind them. When his personal descent harness was presented for certification, he brought it to Adelise's rebuilt yard. She examined the cable but did not fasten it to him. You once trusted my rope with your life, she said. I trusted your hands and then condemned their work when trusting a report was easier. Yes. Will you attach the line? No. She handed the harness to Nella Quist, now a licensed guild inspector. Nella tied and tested the king's safety knot while Adelise signed only the material certificate. Lysander accepted the division without protest. Weeks later, after every public lift passed inspection and Hugh's corrected record was carved beside the eastern brake rail, Lysander returned without guards. The rebuilt rope house smelled of fire, hemp, mountain rain, and fresh alder. Adelise was setting a new Embercord line across the curing rail. I cannot rebuild what I burned by standing near it, he said. No. I can submit every line under my authority to the law your guild wrote. That is duty. Yes. He did not call duty devotion. Adelise placed the loose end of the new cord in his hands. Hold the tension. Do not pull. He obeyed. The rope remembered weight, direction, and strain. It did not remember guilt. That burden belonged to people. When the splice set, Adelise closed her hand over his long enough to test whether he had held steady. He had. She did not tie his safety line. Not yet. But she allowed him to remain at the curing rail, while the first honest rope for the reopened skyways took shape between them.